Greetings, fellow travelers. Welcome to the 68th level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 99 human archmage, Ryan Turford, and I'm joined, as always, for the first time in a fortnight, by the doctor himself, the level 99 elf medic, Mr. Garret Bland. Garret, how are you doing on this lovely, lovely Monday evening? And welcome back to the show, buddy. Good to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm adjusted now. Like I am sleeping normally. Yeah, but it was a great trip. Going over to Europe and visiting all those countries. It was certainly an experience.
Nice.
Lots of good food.
Yeah.
Lots of adventures. So yeah, it was good stuff, man.
That's awesome. I know you talked about it a lot on Shack this week, so I'm not going to make you kind of repeat, all your stories about all your stuff there. Like, of course, you and Rebecca had a great conversation about that. So if people want to know how Garrett's vacation was, definitely go back and listen to that, because I have more pressing matters to ask Garret about.
Of course.
Because I saw that you tweeted that you finished Xenoblade Chronicles 3 finally. And we need to at least, acknowledge the fact that this game is finally over. You finally finished Xenoblade Chronicles just in time, of course, because Mario Rabbids is out this week.
Just in time. Oh, yeah. So I'm super pumped for Mario plus Rabbids. I'm glad to be done with that game. It's a long time coming. I beat that game around 70-ish hours, which is actually kind of the average time players are like finishing the story. Of course, there's much more content that you could do post game, and then there's DLC. Of course, there's gonna be extra side story. I just want to, just go over my thoughts a little bit. Now I've been through it all. I think it's the strongest Xenoblade Chronicles game in terms of gameplay and story. I always still have gripes with Xenoblade Chronicles as a series, and you can take a listen back to our episode about Xenoblade Chronicles if you want.
Yep.
We listed all about that. So it's a Xenoblade Chronicles game still. Just to let you know, like if you don't like the first one or the second one, I don't know if you're gonna like the third one, but it's definitely it hit a lot of themes in terms of story. It was very strong. I was an emotional wreck at the end of this game. It was a great ending. I'm glad to be done with it. Now on to Mario plus Rabbids. I can't wait for this game.
Nice.
It's gonna be so good.
Yeah, while you were away, I got my collector's edition of Xenoblade Chronicles and then unboxed it, so it's actually on my shelf kind of behind me here, and I'm excited to play it at some point. And it's just rough finding 70 hours I can just carve out to play this game.
Right.
I've been looking for a moment, because I do want to play it before we do our RPG of the year show that I'm imagining that we haven't talked about yet, but we're gonna probably do before the end of the year, just like we did last year.
Okay.
So I would love to at least dabble in it at least before that. But I don't know when that's going to be at this point, because again, I
want you to get to the chapter 5. I want you to at least beat until chapter 5 after that. And then I think the ending's great. I think it's a great resolution. It doesn't really change too much of my impressions of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, chapter 5 wrecked me hard. Like I had never seen that in a video game, probably other than Last of Us, like emotionally hitting me. So
it sounds like too, if I get to that point, I'll probably be like, I'm probably not going to want to put this down now. I'm just going to want to just get to the end of it and see
how you want to see how it ends.
Yeah, it's because I felt that way with Persona 5 as well, where you and I both know that game starts off very slowly, and eventually when you get to a specific point, for me it was definitely like the third kind of chapter. Like when I got to that point, I'm like, all right, I'm all in dungeon, with this. Like, I know that I'm not going to put this down at this point. Like, I'm all in with this. Whereas the first two palaces are kind of just, like, they're okay. I don't love them as much as the rest of the game. So, it's certain games like have like points like that where it's just like, I know that I'm not going to put this down. I have to see it through to the end kind of thing. And then speaking of Persona 5, it's out this week too. So there you go. And then we've got, Star Ocean next week, and I'll probably be the one person on staff who actually plays Star Ocean next week. So
it's probably gonna be just you. Square Enix, I don't know what they're doing this year, but they got 20 RPGs just ready to fire.
We got Star Ocean next week, and then like 2 weeks later we got Tactics Ogre. So it's just like
we got Tactics Ogre, we got Harvestella, we got
I forgot about that
Final Fantasy Crisis Core, we got Dragon Quest Treasures. Oh my gosh,
they still have 5 more games before the end of the year, and there's only 3 more months left of the year, Garret. So it's too
it's crazy
many games. Well, we should probably, get in the show a little bit. So let's clear the dungeon of those pesky mobs. So folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. Number one, if you're watching the live stream right now over at youtube.com/carpoolgaming, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and then ding, 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 ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we go live, like we're going live right now, or likewise, whenever we put up a new video, you'll be able to see it there. Just like my reviews of all these Square Enix RPGs, like my review of Valkyrie Elysium, which just went out last week, and I had a lot to say about that one, so definitely make sure to check those out on the channel. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you're listening there. And likewise, if you want this show a little bit early or some exclusive content like the Yumi Capri podcast that we did last week with Seth and Lachlan, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/carpoolgaming. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar, and out comes content. And then last but not least, we've got an RPG Cave t-shirt as well as other Carpool Gaming merch over on our merch store, bit.ly/CPG merch. Oh, and one final thing as well, Extra Life is happening next week.
Oh, it's coming on.
I know, next week.
It's next week? Early?
November 4th.
It's not next week. Oh, right. Wait, it's next week in terms of the release of this episode.
Yeah, the release of this episode, it'll be next week. So
yes,
please be excited for Extra Life, of course. We at Carpool Gaming are actually coming together with our friends over at Save the Game Media and the Trophy Room.
Awesome.
And we're actually all fundraising under one giant banner. We have some awesome prizes. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up, Garrett, is because we just announced on the Yumi Capri podcast on Friday a very, very exciting RPG focused prize that I'm actually very proud to be giving away from my personal collection here. We got
That's so cool. Oh, he's
Final Fantasy 14 Endwalker collector's box.
Look at that big boy.
Yeah, it's really big. There's a statue of the Warrior of Light in here. There's a plushie. There's a frame with pictures in it. There's all kinds of crazy stuff in this box. This is like a grail item for Final Fantasy 14 people.
Yeah.
Because there was a super low print run on this. There's maybe 1,000 of these in existence.
That's very low count.
And this goes for about, $400 to $500 on eBay.
Oh, it's not the statue that's $10,000.
No, it's not that
from
one.
Square Enix.
So we are giving
that's still pretty big.
We're giving that away, as well as, Mr. Badbit has graciously donated a God of War Ragnarok collector's edition that we're giving away.
That's
we're
so cool.
Also giving away, God of War Ragnarok digital codes, Game Pass codes, all kinds of cool stuff. So you're going to want to head on over to our Extra Life link. I will have it in the show notes or the description of this video if you're watching on YouTube. So definitely make sure to check all that stuff out. Well, without further ado, Garrett, it's time to read from the sacred texts, because we got to talk about, now that Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope is out later this week, we got to talk about the original game. Because, this is an episode, Garrett, that I knew we would do eventually. We would have to save, the perfect time for it. And then, this weekend we were both kind of like, all right, what are we going to talk about on Monday? I was like, oh, yeah, Mario plus Rabbids is out this week. We should probably talk about this game. So we're finally doing the episode where we're kind of talking about Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. So I'm going to go ahead and regale you with some fun facts, but also, I think we're going to be a little more interactive on this fun facts, Garrett, because I got some stuff I got to ask you about, because I'm curious to know your thoughts about, certain point of this game's life cycle. So first off, this game was developed by Ubisoft Milan and Paris. They basically worked together on this project, because Ubisoft tends to have a bunch of studios kind of cross over on all their projects. And Miyamoto and a bunch of other people at Nintendo were also involved with kind of keeping the game within the Mario lore and making sure that both the universes kind of seemed synced up together quite well. Now, Garrett, do you remember how this game was unveiled? Because this game was originally revealed at E3 2017, and the game came out 2 months later on August 29th, 2017. But do you remember what it was like when the kind of the leaked images happened for this game? Because this was it
was pretty infamous.
It leaked a few months before, the game reveal at E3. But I want to know from you, Garrett, what you thought, going into that E3, what were your expectations or what your thoughts were on, Mario plus Rabbids kind of coming together and having a game in general.
Dude, I don't know. It was sort of weird to hear the rumor, because you think it's fake. Because the rumor was, people don't like, no, it was a released image, like at least a couple images, full text of what this game is,
Yeah.
and like the release date, the characters. Like at first you think a Mario plus Rabbids crossover. I was like, okay, that's believable.
Mm-hmm.
A Mario plus Rabbids crossover tactical role playing game for the Switch. You're
Mm-hmm.
just like, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think Rabbids, this kind of crazy. I don't know. They're like minions. You
Yeah.
know, they're just like these crazy little guys just running everywhere. You don't imagine them being in a cohesive tactical way and like having guns. That's the big thing too, was the guns with Mario. Like I couldn't imagine, something like that. So at first I didn't believe it, but then like I think it was later on that day or maybe the next day, people were confirming like this is legit. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is leaked, this is real. Ubisoft, of course, infamous of leaking a lot of information out there before releasing their announcements. So yeah, that's what's going through my head. And then when they said tactical RPG, that got my attention, of course, because that's my genre. That's our genre. We love that game for those types of games. So yeah, I was pretty into it during the showcase.
Whereas like before the first showcase, I remember because that was back when I was doing the Game Moose podcast with Drew McMillan and Brock McLaughlin, and I remember us sitting down and because the leaked images happened the same day we were supposed to record a podcast, because it was like our kind of like our E3 preview kind of episode, because it was like, again, not too long before E3 kind of happened. And we were looking at the images together. We're just like, what is this? Like, what? Why is like a Rabbid version of Peach taking a selfie? And why does Mario have like a blaster? And like, what is this game even gonna be? And like, who is this for? Like, I remember us having this big conversation, not understanding really, because I think at the time that we saw like kind of the initial character images, there wasn't a lot of information about the gameplay itself that was there. Like, I think a lot of that stuff came afterwards, like much closer to the reveal. So when all we really had to work with were like the character designs, and we were just like, what are they doing here? Especially because you have to also consider at that time, the Rabbids were really only known for party games and acting like the minions and being very loud and obnoxious. Like that's what the Rabbids were very much known for in 2017 before this game came out. So I remember just like us being like super skeptical of this game going into E3 and not like being excited about it at all. We were all kind of just dreading watching the Ubisoft event, because they're like, oh, we're gonna have to sit through this section and then Just Dance is gonna come on afterwards, and it's just, it's not gonna be that good. But then when we saw the presentation and saw the gameplay and saw the game in action, like I turned to, because we kind of reacted to it together. I turned to Brock and Drew and I'm like, you know what? That was the best game Ubisoft showed here. And that's where we saw like Assassin's Creed Origin and other stuff too. So there were some good looking games there, but I'm just like, man, this game actually looks really good. I'm actually really excited about this. So yeah, like they kind of like, when they showed us the gameplay, it kind of proved all the naysayers wrong, which of course is a shame that it kind of leaked the way it did, because I think it would have been like a really nice surprise if it didn't kind of leak that way. But it didn't really hurt the sales of the game or hurt kind of the game's reputation, because I think like really solid word of mouth got out there when this game came out. Like people were excited for this game, and especially like people picking it up and playing it. Like I remember people being really into this game. Especially even that year being a super busy year for the Switch as it is, because it was the launch year for the Switch, and there was like a big new game literally every month.
So many bangers that year, and then you got Mario plus Rabbids, which is like, I think it's still my favorite game, my favorite Switch game of that year too, even though Breath of the Wild was out there. So it's a really strong game for sure.
For sure. Well, again, that's why we're talking about it all these years later.
Of course.
I still can't believe it's actually been like more than 5 years since that game came out, because it feels like it's been sooner. Like it almost feels like it came out in 2018 or 2019. But yeah, because that game's older than Mario Odyssey, and again, it just breaks my brain when I think about that. I'm like, oh yeah, that did come out first, which is just weird to me. So The game itself kind of came about with Ubisoft brand and producer Xavier Monzarez. I think that's how you pronounce it anyways. If not, you can yell at me in the comments. As well as other Ubisoft staff when they were tasked with the purpose of coming up with the future direction for what the Rabbids were going to look like. Because, again, as I mentioned earlier, at the time, the Rabbids were only known for party games and they weren't in, like, any other style of game. And Ubisoft saw kind of potential in the Rabbids characters, but they wanted to do something different with the Rabbids.
Right.
So this was all the way back in 2013 that they were having discussions about, like, well, okay, where did the Rabbids go from here kind of thing, and what can we, put them into? And of course, around this time, this is when, all the Rabbids games were, for the most part, Nintendo exclusive. So, Ubisoft and Nintendo were working very closely together on, planning Rabbids games out. So that's kind of where the discussion started coming into play about, the idea of, maybe bringing a Nintendo series into the Rabbids and kind of having them have this crossover game. And it was actually the director of the game, Davide Solani, who actually pitched the idea of Mario crossing over with the Rabbids. And after talking with Miyamoto about the idea and some of their ideas for the game, that's when that idea actually became approved. But it was definitely something that they had to sell Nintendo on. And there were apparently a lot of, behind closed doors conversations about them, coming up with different ideas for this game. But the main reason why the game's actually turn-based and not like an action game, it was because the Mario and Rabbids gameplay styles are just so wildly different from each other that they didn't feel like they would feel cohesive enough to do like an action game or a platforming game with the Rabbids specifically. So that's why they thought, okay, well, maybe we'll do a turn-based game because it'll probably feel a little bit better. And the main reason why it went to be a tactical RPG is they of course, since it is a Mario game, they didn't want to have it cross over with other Mario existing franchises already. Like they didn't obviously want to do another sports game with the Rabbids, because Mario pretty much has every sports game under the sun covered at this point. Same with racing. Like it wouldn't make sense to make like a Mario and Rabbids, Mario Kart style game. And likewise, they already had, at the time anyways, the Mario and Luigi RPGs going, as well as, Paper Mario doing its own thing. So that's why it was decided to do a tactical role-playing game. Because again, other than Fire Emblem, they didn't really have, another one of those under their belt. And likewise, Mario has never been in that type of game before. So that was how that idea kind of came about. And as Ubisoft kind of presented different prototypes to Nintendo, the response that they actually got from Nintendo was interesting to read about, because basically Nintendo came back because apparently like the original builds of this game, Garret, were like very tame. Like they still had the blaster design that they have now, because they apparently use like the movie The Fifth Element as like a reference for what they wanted the the weapons to look like.
Oh my goodness, really?
Because again, like a lot of this was done in Paris, right? Or at least a lot of this planning was. And it's a very popular movie there. So the response they got from Nintendo is, no, this is too tame. Make it weirder, because you got the Rabbids.
Yeah, you gotta be a little wackier about it for sure.
Yeah, so that's where like they really Nintendo really pushed them to really like inject more of the Rabbids style into it, because it sounded like the initial designs were, it was going to be like very kind of cookie cutter-ish Mario with the design itself, and it felt with just the Rabbids kind of in the Mario universe. Whereas, the final game, as we can kind of tell after playing the game, is like very much like that at all. And again, a lot of that had to do with Nintendo saying, go bigger with it, go weirder with it, do this stuff. Like that's the reason, Rabbid Peach is the way she is, so those.
Yeah. I remember the reveal of this game now that you keep talking about it in 2017 and E3. That was when Ubisoft really pushed like Nintendo and Ubisoft collaboration. You got Yves Guillemot with Miyamoto with the guns, back to back, photo shoot up. And then they also had the crossover stuff with the Atlas one, the Starlink.
Yeah,
that's it with Star Fox. So yeah, definitely Ubisoft was pushing that Nintendo collaboration, and I'm glad this game was a fantastic idea. With studios, I haven't heard of Ubisoft Paris or Ubisoft Milan too much, right? You heard of the others, but not these ones in particularly. So
yeah, a lot of these other studios worked on, the Tom Clancy games, or they were support studios on Assassin's Creed and stuff like that. But you're right, like this was like them trying to do their own thing, or again, like I think Paris specifically were like the ones working on the Rabbids, and then Milan, I'm very certain was mostly like a Tom Clancy kind of support studio.
Got it.
It's interesting to kind of bring them in, which again makes sense when you think about it, because again, Paris being like the home of the Rabbids, and then Milan working on all these Tom Clancy games, which have like strategy backbones to them, kind of coming together to put one game together. So it kind of makes sense when you think about the collaboration they came with. But yeah, so that was kind of the fun facts I kind of came up with this one. But yeah, it was like an interesting kind of development path, even though again, a lot of this, it's like so much of this was kept under wraps really until that leak, because again, like they announced the game and it was out in 2 months, which is just weird to think about. But it was cool to kind of talk about that. But Garret, since this came out in 2017, did you play this when it came out? Did you wait till later? Like, when did you play this game?
I did buy it day one. Okay. I remember getting this game day one. I did not I did not go all the way through with this game the first time around. I think I played a good chunk of it. Was it like right around the time where Splatoon 2 came out as well?
It was like a month after Splatoon 2.
Yeah, there's a lot of Switch games going on. There was Breath of the Wild that I finished up. Splatoon 2 was there. Mario Odyssey was on the horizon.
Don't forget about ARMS, Garret. ARMS.
Oh, of course. I can't forget
your arms with. Sean Capri would never let us live it down if we didn't at least mention ARMS here. But Mario Kart was there too. Like, don't forget about Mario Kart
was there. Yeah, of course. But yeah, I did not play all the way through the first time, and then I think I got back into it. I think it was in the year like very recently, actually. It was like 2020, or 2019, one of those years. I got back into it. And I remember streaming it a lot, and then I wrapped it up and then played the DLC at the same time. So picked it up, did like, I think the first 2 worlds, or like I was into the second world. Of course, it's games. We drop out. We go to different games all the time, and we block it out of our memory. And then I was like, oh yeah, that's a great game. I need to go back to it. And so this is one of those games where I went back and I was in the full swing of it and beat it. So
nice.
Yeah, my experience has been pretty disparate, but overall, at the end of it, very impressed with this game. It's one of the greatest introduction to a tactical role-playing game I've seen. Like I would, if someone in the audience, like, hey, what's a good tactical role-playing game to go to? It's like, I wouldn't say Fire Emblem the first time. I would probably say Mario plus Rabbids first, and if you like that, then you can try out a Fire Emblem game if you want to. So yeah, that's what I think of it. What about you, Ryan?
First off, Mario plus Rabbids. I mean, to kind of finish your rebuttal about it being a beginner RPG. I usually only don't recommend it as someone's first tactical RPG because I think the difficulty curve on this game in particular is just so much higher in the middle of the game than something like Fire Emblem, where I think I think it's more difficult for people who are new to the genre than something like Fire Emblem Awakening or Fire Emblem Birthright. So that's usually, and I think we talked about this a little bit like on our RPG starter guide episode. But that's the main reason why I usually don't recommend this one as like someone's first strategy role playing game. Because again, I think there's a lot of good accessibility options and ways to make the game easier, but I think that difficulty curve in the middle of the game threw off a lot of people that I talked to who played this game.
Okay.
But as for me, cool. When I played it, I'm kind of similar to you. I actually bought it at launch as well because I was really excited to play it. But there was a little game out at launch called Tales of Berseria that I couldn't put down. Yeah. And then after that, I played this other little game. You might have heard of it called Persona 5. And I played that.
That one.
I played that for 100 hours. Oh, and then at that point, because hadn't, at that point after I'd finished Persona 5, I hadn't actually, gotten around to playing, Horizon Zero Dawn because it came out the same, the week before Zelda Breath of the Wild. So I played that after that. And then Final Fantasy 14 Shadowbringers came out then. And so after all that, it was October time when I finally got a chance to play this game. So October of 2017 is when I finally got a chance to play this game. And I honestly, same as you, Garrett, I really love it. I don't rate it as highly as to like, my favorite Switch games. There are a lot of Switch games I like over this. But I do really love this game as well. And I think it's a special game. And definitely, again, kind of beat the odds. Like, it's definitely a formula that could have not worked very easily. It could have just been, pretty poor, if I'm being honest. But, they totally, the team at Ubisoft totally did a great job, putting this game together. So I have to definitely applaud it for that. But that's when I played it. It was like, again, like kind of after I played through like all the other 2017 games, because there were way too many games that
there's so many.
Out of. But
yeah, 2017 was a pretty strong year. But yeah, Mario plus Rabbids, probably the biggest surprise.
Yeah,
like out of all of it that year, is like that was the biggest surprise game, I think.
Yeah, I mean between that and ARMS, Garrett, ARMS. See what I'm doing with the ARMS?
You gotta stop with that franchise. Oh.
Actually,
I think Nintendo's trying to forget it.
That's true. Actually, that's why Sean Capri keeps betting every year that they'll do an ARMS 2, and I'm just like, no. Game's
absolutely not.
That game is not coming out. It's just like, Garrett, do you remember Snipper Clips? Like, do you think they'll ever do a Snipper Clips 2?
Oh, I like Snipper Clips. That was a cute game.
Me too.
I think that was just cute.
That was a fun game.
Yeah.
I would love to see them do another Snipper Clips. That game was really good. But that was also the same year, like 2017 with Snipper Clips as well, because that was this much.
Dang.
It was one of the better Switch launch games, actually, with Snipper Clips.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
It's better than the 1-2 Switch anyways. But anyways, getting back to Mario plus Rabbids, now that we've talked up this game quite a bit, Garrett, so I got to ask you, since you talked a big game about this game, what makes Mario plus Rabbids so special? Like, what about this game in particular makes it special when you compare it to other, strategy role-playing games, or really just sets it apart from other role-playing games on the Switch in your mind, especially since, again, you're referring to it as like one of the best games on the Switch. I kind of want to know why.
Yeah, I think it does a very good job of, it's first just the art and the cinema, like all together, like the story is pretty, I would say high end. It's a high caliber game from the beginning. Like it's a story. It's very cartoonish, has Mario in it. It has Bowser as a villain. And going through the game, you go into these like various worlds, and then it does a very good job of introducing you to the game, and then how the Rabbids and the Mario worlds kind of collide together, and how they're trying to figure out how to get through it. And then each of the hub worlds you kind of go into, it's just like a Mario game, right? It's like its own world. You like kind of go through it. I think it does a pretty good job at like gameplay design, and like there's a little bit of secret passages for certain power-ups or whatever. So right now I'm just talking about the non-gameplay stuff, actually, just like the hub world and just walking around. I think it does a pretty good job of like having its own charm. I mean, it's pretty cute with Mario and the Rabbids themselves. I think they did a really good job of showing the personality of the Rabbids in a much positive like way. I felt like Rabbids all the time, like before this game, they were just chaotic. I'm like, oh, these are just chaotic little bunnies. I don't want to play those games. Like that sounds like, I don't know, not really understanding it. They're kind of just rambunctious. They're for like, like younger age or like smaller kids that just want to go in and go crazy with these games. With this one, I think they did a very good job again with the Rabbids having the personality of the Mario characters with Peach and Yoshi and Luigi and so on and so forth, and just like making fun of them too. I think that was kind of cool. They have their own little personality.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I love about the non-gameplay stuff. The gameplay stuff is very solid. I kind of agree with you where it's probably not the most like the best tactical RPG. I'm not saying that. What I do like about it though is how much character is in the gameplay though. Like every time you do like an action with a character and every time you do a movement, it's like it's thought provoking. I think going through, you have to strategize pretty much. I agree with you. There is probably a difficulty spike in the
Yeah.
middle of the game. I definitely agree with you there. Because you really got to think about the movement of the characters and how to like jump up, and like every time they do an action, it's full of animations. And then at the same time, the skills and like the setup and whatever, it's very solid as well. I just don't think there's a other than the difficulty spike, I don't think there's like a bad like a really irking thing about this game.
Mhm.
Or maybe the enemies are a little bit more difficult. Other than that, like it's a very solid game. And that's why I think it's one of my favorite Switch games. One of the biggest surprise game of 2017. So
Yeah.
what do you think, Ryan?
You bring up a lot of good points there, Garrett, especially like first of all, I love what you said about, the game has its own, charm to it and its style to it, and it's never kind of afraid to beat to its own drum kind of thing. Like, yeah, I do like really feel that whenever I play this game. It feels like it properly fits in the Mario universe in a way that, again, I wasn't really expecting kind of going into it. While also
Mhm.
kind of having its own kind of feel to it, its own like, French kind of feel to it as well, in the same way that the Rabbids kind of do as well. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're right. Like Rabbids characters themselves in the game, like I loved the fact that they had like Rabbid versions of like the four kind of main heroes, and like
Mhm.
how their personalities and gameplay styles even differed from those four main characters as well. And they had like a lot of personality in the game as well. And I did care about them a lot more than, the Rabbids in any of the Rabbids games before. But to be fair, they
Right.
were like, you have to understand again, like you're not really caring about the Rabbids in the Rabbids party games and stuff, because, they're just there. And
Yeah.
to your point, they just kind of yell a lot, and they are basically the video game equivalent of minions.
Yes.
But they actually kind of made me care about the Rabbids a little bit, which is just a feat upon itself that someone was able to do
Mhm.
that kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. Like there aren't really that many faults with the game as well. Again, it's fun to play. I love how pick up and play the
It is.
strategy stuff is, like, even to the point, like even just the addition of something like the slide to
Yeah.
knock an enemy over, for example, or just slide past an obstacle. Like even just a simple addition like that just kind of changed the formula of strategy role playing games and kind of the way that you think about playing those types of games. So I like the way that they kind of played with the strategy role playing formula and made it feel just much more arcadey and less of a XCOM like gritty
Yeah.
style kind of
It's
strategy game.
not gritty at all,
No,
which is good. Yeah, very cartoonish for sure.
yeah, like it felt like it wasn't rooted in reality, like you're playing like a big cartoon, which is exactly what you'd want from a game like this, I think.
Mhm.
And I think they did a really good job with that, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so excited, for the sequel, out later this week. But Garrett, we should probably talk a little bit about mechanics, because like other than the slide, because we just talked about that as well as some of the other
Mhm.
mechanics in the game itself. Are there any other mechanics you think you'd like to touch on? Because I think this game doesn't really have like super deep mechanics. Like there's a cover system,
No.
which is pretty good, and then of course you got the slide. But besides that, what other mechanics kind of stand out about this game?
Yeah, you got the typical XCOM stuff like cover, and then like, shooting and aiming. There's a percentage with that.
Yeah.
There's certain types of damage that you can do, like honey. You can make people stick it to a certain spot, which is actually pretty useful. I think the one thing the game does a pretty good job of, like, is like you can take advantage of those skills. It
Mhm.
feels very satisfying. And then if you don't take advantage of them, I agree with you. It kind of like bites you in the butt
Yeah.
in the battle. Like these AI, like the enemy computers here, they're relentless. They will destroy you if you don't take advantage of what you have with your characters. So there's that. Of course, each of the characters have their own little spins. Of course, healing. There's tanks that you can like deploy in the field. There's a lot of field kind of mechanics around there too. There's tubes that can go up into certain heights. There's certain obstacles that you can kind of trigger. Um, I love the battles, how it's not just one thing, right? It's not just defeat the enemy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like you have to go from one point A to point B, and that does not necessarily mean you have to defeat all the enemies. You just got to make sure you safely escort your party to the other side. There's that, and there's just a lot of variety with this game, man. That's what it made me think a lot, for sure.
Yeah, it actually, again, like, it's interesting that it just is a game that relies so much on status effects in a way that it almost feels like a Shin Megami Tensei game in that way, where like if you're not like using every little like advantage that you have to get through the game, like it's gonna make your life a little bit difficult. So I do like that style of game, but I know that style of game is not, for everybody. But yeah, like I love too how like there's also like interconnected levels as well, where like you've got one map, but that's not the whole map that you're going through. Like there are different levels that are connected together through the pipes. So you're actually, sometimes you're traveling through like 3 or 4 different stages to kind of get to the end, or sometimes to take out the enemies, or like, as you pointed out, there's a lot of different objectives going on there as well.
Yeah.
But also too, I like the style of each of the characters as well. Like when you're going to different areas as well. Like when you're in the lava level, for example, like the Rabbids will look different, and then they'll have like unique abilities based off that particular area, which I think was interesting. Like that was an interesting approach to the strategy itself. But also too, like it almost felt like playing this game, it felt like a less extreme version of Disgaea, if that makes any sense. Like it just was like, the mechanics themselves just positioned themselves to be very goofy or very, arcadey, to the point where, again, you could like if you take advantage of a lot of the stuff, you could really, really overpower the enemies as well. And I liken it a lot to that series as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's just overall, I think, pretty solid XCOM like game. Again, I was just surprised coming from a Ubisoft studio, like ever coming up with this game. And that's why I'm very excited to what they are doing with Sparks of Hope.
Yeah.
Like what are they doing different with the mechanics? What are they tuning? What are they optimizing? What are they adding to it? I've been on, like, I barely read anything about Sparks of Hope. So yeah.
Yeah, and actually I saw a couple of people in our chat also mentioning they're kind of in the same boat as well, where they're, making sure not to. They're on kind of on full media blackout with this game as well. They don't really want to know, what's going on with this one as well. And again, reviews just dropped today. And even though I saw kind of the open critics where I didn't go and read any of the reviews, because just like you, I just don't want to know anything else going into it as well. But beyond this, Garrett, we should at least talk about this a little bit. Although I never played this, so I'm curious to know if you did. There was a DLC expansion for this game as well that had Donkey Kong, the Donkey Kong DLC. Yes. Did you get a chance to check this one out? Because like I said, I didn't get a chance to ever go back to it.
I did play this.
Okay.
I did play the DLC. It is wonderful. It is one of my favorite DLC packs ever in a game. It is so full of character. Donkey Kong is one of my favorite Nintendo franchises, like probably top 3 franchises. So had to get into it. I like Donkey Kong as a character in there. I wish there were more I wish there were more Donkey Kong related characters that were in the party itself.
You want Rabid Cranky Kong? Like, oh man, I can't even imagine. Rabid Funky Kong.
Yeah, that would have been crazy. Yeah, no, they did a very good job of like exploiting that world too. I think that studio has a magic of, okay, they see what that world is. Now, can we kind of like build a game design or an overworld hub just around that and have so much style, so much secret obstacles, and then have the gameplay levels kind of blended into it. I don't know, like it's kind of magic over there what they're doing with those games. So yeah, the DLC was top notch. I highly recommend it. If you play through the base game, go through this one. I think it's like close to like 4-ish to 5 hours or something like that.
Yeah, I remember people saying it wasn't that long. So
yeah.
You probably
add a new mechanic to it with Donkey Kong. Add the banana, like throw. Oh, you were able to throw your characters.
Okay,
like
that's interesting. So again, just like this guy, going back to my comparison, like even more like that game now that you're throwing your characters.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, Donkey Kong again. Like I liked how like the Donkey Kong Rabbid was kind of there throughout the story in the main game. So it was cool that they actually did like a DLC pack based around. Even though I'm gonna just say this, Garrett, and you're gonna get upset with me. I don't like Donkey Kong at all.
Oh no,
I hate Donkey Kong. But I'm glad
that
other
breaks
people
my
like
heart.
Donkey Kong. I'm just not into Donkey Kong. It's kind of like Pirates, Garrett. I don't like Pirates.
Oh
I don't like
yeah,
Donkey
it is a
Kong.
pirate thing.
I guess. Well, it's too many bananas.
Donkey Kong Country 2 is like my jam.
Oh, I
Like,
love
and
those.
that's
I
all
love playing those
pirates.
games, despite the fact about how I feel about Donkey Kong. Like that's how good those games are.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's all. One of the other reasons why I was just like, yeah, I probably never need to get to this DLC probably at some point. But it sounds like it's super fun. I know a lot of people really liked that DLC as well, which is why I'm curious because I think there's a new DLC pack coming with Sparks of Hope. So I'm curious to know what that's going to end up being. Maybe it's a
Oh, I
Rosalina
thought they
focused one.
teased. Oh, I don't know if people want to know.
I
It's
didn't see
out
the
there.
I didn't see the tease, so I don't know what it is.
Oh, okay. It's a Ubisoft related character. How about that?
It's Splinter Cell. I knew it. This is Rabbids plus Splinter Cell plus Mario.
I think
go.
other people can guess what that
Oh,
is, but it is a Ubisoft related character.
I'm so glad
That's
that
all I'll say.
I'm so glad that Beyond Good and Evil is crossing over with Mario and the Rabbids.
They're finally bringing that franchise into a
You're
game.
gonna be able to play as Paige and Jade and all my favorite characters from Beyond Good and Evil, the original, and not the remaster.
You're going to be able to play Ezio Auditore over on
Dead
the
Friends,
DLC.
Oh god.
Oh my god.
That'll be hilarious. Well, anyways, speaking of Sparks and Hope, Garrett, because we got to at least, talk about it at least a little bit here. So what are your hopes for Sparks of Hope? I know for me personally, I'm actually like, one of the reasons I'm so excited for Sparks of Hope is because it's Galaxy themed, Mario Galaxy themed, because Mario Galaxy is my favorite 3D Mario game. I love both Galaxy 1 and 2 so much. I also really love Rosalina. So finally getting her in, Mario plus Rabbids or Rabbid Rosalina is from what we've already only seen so far, or at least from the initial trailer. Anyways, again, I haven't really watched any of their stuff, so I don't know if you get normal Rosalina. I imagine you do it at some point. But I, love the music and the feel and the vibe of those games. So seeing that kind of crossover here, like, gets me like super excited for whatever this is going to be, combined with like what they could possibly do with, the different terrains, like having them be like different planets and stuff like that. Like, I'm super jacked to play this game this week, Garrett. But what are your hopes and dreams for Sparks of Hope? Again, we don't really know much about it since you and I both have been kind of on media blackouts. Yeah. So we're free to speculate a little bit more, even though people will probably correct us in the comments if we talk about something that's already been revealed.
Yeah, I did see some gameplay, see some trailers of Sparks of Hope. So like before I went to media, like I feel like Ubisoft, they do this a lot, but I think this one in particular, this game, they showed off a little too much.
Yeah.
Like it's like, okay, you got another gameplay. Okay, you got an IGN first. Okay, you got an.
Well,
I just couldn't.
Garrett, they're trying to catch up to Pokemon out there with all the Pokemon stuff because they see Pokemon putting about something every week, and they're like, "We need to do this too."
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's smart to market this game because it's gonna be they know it's gonna be a strong game, and they know it's gonna be on. I mean, it's on Nintendo Switch, so it's gonna have a big audience. It's gonna have Mario in it. I don't blame them trying to, flash out as much content as they can. My hope with Sparks of Hope is, I do like the Mario Galaxy stuff. I'm glad that they're adding it. I just hope it's, more of the same. And when I say that, I mean like this, it's Mario Galaxy. Now let's make it into the Mario plus Rabbids kind of universe and like make it its own style, make it its own levels, make it its own silly story. I love that about the first game. I would like to see a little bit more hub world stuff, secret puzzles. I really do enjoy those little side things other than it's like taking a break from the actual battles themselves. What I do know, the biggest mechanic in this game is the stars. That's gonna be the biggest thing, and they've shown that off like a lot. The novelty of it. You can pair that star with a character, and then that can have its own combination. So you're gonna have a lot more customization to it. I just hope it's not overbearing. I hope it's not like a little too much. Even with the first game, I kind of like, oh, which character do I choose? What skills do I upgrade? Sometimes it's hard. Like, you don't know what's the right path. And that's a lot with these kind of tactical role-playing games. Sometimes you just don't know, unless you get into it and you feel for the level. And then sometimes you have to go back and try again. I think that's the one thing that was one of the more uphill struggles with the first game was sometimes there would be a boss battle and I would fail and I'll be like, how did I fail? Okay, let me try to switch characters up. And eventually I got the right formula. Hopefully in this game, the new one, it's a little bit more friendly towards you. And like, it, I hope it gives you recommendations. Like, it's like, hey, this pairs well together. Like, why don't you try this out? And like, I hope it's a little bit more friendlier too, with beginner users.
Yeah.
With the game.
I think that's feedback that they heard from a lot of people, was that, you know, because of the difficulty spikes, or even to your point, Garret, like some people just wanted to roll with the same party throughout the whole game, and you couldn't do that. So I think that was maybe feedback they got. So maybe it is going to either give you recommendations in there, like we recommend you use this party loadout, or recommend you use like a specific character in there. Like, you know, if there's a level that's really good with Rabid Rosalina, like I hope that maybe they're like, use this character or include her in your party or something like that. Like, I think little tips like that go a long way to helping the user experience. But by and large, I'm expecting this one to definitely be easier than the last one. Because again, I think that's just a lot of people said that, especially again, parents with kids, I know said that a lot. I think that's
that makes sense.
I think that's kind of their target demographic with a game like this, right? So, like, even though you and I are much older and we'll probably still enjoy it, I think their target audience is probably either like late or early teens kind of thing with this one.
And I was struggling, like, with the game. Like, I was like, dang, I'm failing at this.
Well, yeah, you and I both being like big strategy RPG people playing difficult strategy RPGs. I mean, for God's sakes, you finished Shin Megami Tensei 5, yet you still struggle with this game.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so yeah,
makes sense.
But yeah, I'm just super excited to play it, you know, later this week, and I'm excited to find out, you know, what all the cool new ideas and tricks that they put into this game, because I think it's gonna be.
Me too.
I think there's gonna be some really entertaining stuff, and again, I can't wait to see what they do with the level design and stuff like that more than anything. And again, a lot like reviewers seem to love it too, so it sounds like it's gonna be another
strong game.
Yeah, I mean, it reviewed 1 point better on OpenCritic than Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Garret. So that's how you know. That's how you know it's gonna be a good game, possibly a Game of the Year contender.
Wait, what? It was 1 point better than Kirby?
Yeah, because Kirby was an 85 on OpenCritic, and then this is an 86.
I'm surprised it was that high.
Yeah,
to be honest with you, I know it's a good game. But yeah, wow, that's pretty strong.
I mean, I know about this because Sean and I actually picked it in our Fantasy Critic League with Mr. Badbit and the Trophy Room. In fact, Kirby was actually counterpicked by the Trophy Room, so they got a nice minus 15 for that. Yeah. Because they're like, there's no way in heck that Kirby and the Forgotten Land is going to be a good game. So that's why it's at top on mine. That's why I knew that. Plus, we also picked Mario plus Rabbids in our league too. So there you go.
Nice.
And to your point, Lachlan in the chat, Kirby was beaten. Blasphemy. I know. I can't believe it either, because Kirby's great. One of Nintendo's greatest characters, if I might say so, Garret. But actually, when's the Kirby crossover with the Rabbids going to come? Like, how cool would that be?
I'll be down with that. That would be pretty cool, actually. That is probably two franchises that need to come together, like at some point.
I actually think they could do something cool with that, because again, you could have like the four kind of main characters: Kirby, Meta Knight, DDD, and then like someone else, and then 4 Rabbid versions of them. Like, that would be really cool. Actually, I kind of want that game now.
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's let some of our listeners into the cave with us, Garret, because we got lots of Mario plus Rabbids questions, and I'm going to apologize to everyone ahead of time, because I played this game again back in 2017, and I haven't played it since, so I might not remember all the things with the specific questions, because again, we got a lot of very specific questions this week. So huge thank you, of course, to everyone who wrote in questions. We're going to start with Nagachaka, which, of course, huge shout out to Nagachaka for being on the show last week with me talking about Nier Automata and filling in for Garret. He asks, who was your favorite character to use on your team, and why was it Luigi? Was it because he's top tier with his long range attacks and his ability to use sentries? #Team Luigi. Because Nagachaka, guess what? You may have written this in as a joke, thinking that we might not actually pick Luigi, but I'm going to say it's Luigi was my favorite character to use for the reasons you talked about, because of his long range attacks, his sentries, but also like, again, he was like the kind of like the party sniper, which, is like one of my favorite, positions to play in a game like that. Or likewise, I love having like a team of snipers in something like XCOM, with a couple forward units. So I actually just like that play style in strategy games. So actually, like, Luigi was actually my favorite character to use, despite Nagachaka just submitting that as a joke. But Garret, not only that too, I just like Luigi as well. He's my favorite Mario character. So, Garret, okay. What about you? Who is your favorite character to use on your team?
I like Luigi a lot. That was a good one. I used him quite a bit in a lot of battles. For the same reasons. Like, being a sniper in XCOM feels kind of cheap, just because you're so far away from the enemy that they can't touch you, and then you just you use a sniper and just like can easily shoot off and pick off people, which is nice. I like his tanks too, his little robot tanks that kind of like go into the field and like blow it up. Pretty cool. Mario, I don't think you can switch out Mario, can you? I actually don't recall.
You could. I think you could switch him out with Rabid Mario.
Oh, okay, that was the thing. I remember Mario being a staple, for sure in my party. Like,
well, he was like the most balanced character, which makes sense because they do that with Mario in every game.
Definitely. And I was also down with Rabid Luigi, and mainly because of his dash attack was a vampire dash. And so you kind of like hit all the people. Like, I got really close to them and like hit all the people and make sure I heal as much as I can with the vampire dash. Pretty cool. Yeah. So I was taking advantage of that. And of course, I can't. I have to mention Rabid Peach.
Of course, because actually, if you didn't bring up Rabid Peach, Garret, that's what I was going to actually say was probably my second favorite is Rabid Peach. I really liked her a lot too.
But main healer. Pretty. Good support good support character.
Because for the most part, I mostly, and this actually, I'll save it because this is actually our next question. This comes to us from Grouchy Surge, who actually has multiple questions for us. First up, did you have a set party or did you vary it up as you played? The game kind of forces you to vary it up at least a little bit, but for the most part, at my core, like, Rabid Peach and Luigi, Mario, and then I usually had Rabid Yoshi as my fourth. Those were kind of the four characters I kind of rolled with through the majority of the experience. And then again, if the level, dictated, swapping one of the characters out for, Rabid Mario, or just normal Peach and stuff like that, like that's when I would usually do that. But Garret, what about you? I'm guessing you made it also sound like you varied it up your party quite a bit.
I definitely varied it up. I did not like Yoshi as much. That was the one character I did not put into the game.
You mean just normal Yoshi, right? Because I agree with normal Yoshi.
Yeah. Normal Yoshi, he came in very late game too. You didn't get him till like probably the third or fourth world. So that's why I just couldn't get used to him, and I didn't care about. I think he did like the rocket launcher stuff. So I didn't care about that. I normally set my party as Mario. I agree with you. Mario, Rabid Peach, and Luigi was like my stable team. And then Rabid Luigi, when he came in, I used him quite a bit as well. That would be my party.
At that point, I think like that's probably because it's not only is it the party you kind of get very early on, but then it's the party that I think works. Like at least the core three that we listed are probably like the three like pillars of your party for the most part for most of the game. And then you kind of swap it out like with whatever, situation kind of arises. But then next up, Grouchy asks, for your party, what was your favorite mechanic? So actually like the sentries that Luigi has combined with his long range attacks were just the things I liked the most about him. I'm guessing something similar for you, right, Garret?
The vampire dash on Rabid Luigi was probably my favorite, and every time I want to take advantage of vampire dash, I did. I don't know why. I just felt so advantageous to just steal health from an enemy and heal myself. Like that, yeah, it was kind of cheap in the game. It felt like I was beating the game at its
Yeah.
own mechanics.
Well, especially like
Yeah,
any
that
game
was
that
my
allows you
favorite.
to take advantage of like life drain attacks that are powerful,
Yeah.
like it almost makes your characters feel overpowered regardless of the RPG. Like I remember, playing Knights of the Old Republic for the first time, and if you play on the dark side, you get this ability called Death Field towards the end of the game, which AoEs all of the enemies within like 20 feet of you, and then it heals you for the amount of damage it deals. And
Oh my
towards the end of the
gosh.
game, it basically just refills your health every time you use it. And by the way, it costs like no force to use towards the end of the game, so you can just spam it over and over again and just murder everybody, while just keeping
Wow.
yourself at full. So, I like it, that's just again just talking about that just kind of reminds me of a game like that too.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah. And then like you get really close to enemies. Certain enemies want to get close to you. They'll walk towards you.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I take advantage of that with that character and just dash a bunch of different characters at the same time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
All
really
right.
nice.
Last question from Grouchy Surge. He asks, for your weapons, what was your favorite type of damage? And honestly, I don't really remember what my favorite type of damage is. It's probably
There was
probably
a lot
honey.
different.
I don't know though.
The honey was a big one, especially with certain enemies that want to get close to you. The honey was essential
Mhm.
with certain shots. Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's some vampire damage ones. I remember an ice one, but I just can't recall exactly what it does. Um, yeah, there's varying differences in the oh, there was one that like you can not take control of the enemies, but make them kind of like harmless
Right.
or like yeah, it's something like that. That was a big one too, in late game. But my favorite type of damage was honey, because it got me out of sticky situations, pun
I see
intended.
what you did there, Garrett. Oh
So
my
there you
god.
go.
Good God. All right, next up we got Blaze Knight, who, oh boy, has a whole bunch of questions too that again, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
remember half of these. But anyways, Blaze Knight asks, which boss fight was your favorite? And honestly, I don't really have a good answer for this. I'm just gonna be boring and say Bowser. What about you, Garrett?
You did not like the Phantom one? The
I mean,
Phantom boss?
I mean, clearly it's not memorable enough for me to remember all the
Mm.
ins and outs of the Phantom boss, Garrett.
So the Phantom boss, you come into it and he does a whole segment, like a whole singing number in front of you, does a whole scene, and then you get into the game
Oh yeah,
and
I remember
he
that.
is he's pretty tough. Just because you had to knock out lights in the field before, in order to like actually attack him, and then he had three kind of waves with him, multiple enemies kind of all around, and he does a lot of just wacky cartoonish stuff too. Yeah, the Phantom one was creatively my favorite boss,
Okay.
other than Rabbit
Because
Kong.
yeah, as you
Rabbit
started
Kong
talking
was
about
a
it with
good
the
one.
song, I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that now. But yeah, like he's actually a pretty cool boss. But yeah, it's just like I don't know if he's the best. It's kind of hard to define like what boss fight was my favorite because of because I don't know if I love the mechanics in that fight, but you're right about
Yeah,
like
me
the
neither.
style of the boss itself is probably the best one. But,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Anyways, getting back to Blaze Knight's myriad of questions, which was the hardest boss fight for you? And I don't know if again similar answer from me. Like I don't know if I felt like they were all about the same level of difficulty for me. So I don't think I had like a hardest one, or one that stands out in my mind is like the hardest boss fight. I felt like they all were a similar level of difficulty. I think. In fact, I think like, and before I turn it over to you, I actually think like the normal levels to me were actually harder than the boss fights, especially the later levels.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the most part, I think there were certain normal levels that were pretty difficult.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Like some of the
you're
levels in
pulling
World 7, oh my god, they were hard.
yeah. And so with the Phantom one, I think I retried it twice or something like that, just because of the wave of enemies and then get to the lights like all around the map. Pretty difficult to get through. The Rabbit Kong was actually pretty surprising how hard it was. I had to retry that, I think, once as well. Just because like he kind of messed up the field a lot, and like you had to make sure you time it right in order to attack him in certain areas. So yeah, I would say those two for sure.
Nice. Next up, which normal enemy was your favorite? Do you have a favorite normal enemy, Garret? Because we talked about this off air before we started, and I'm like, is it just me, or are all the normal enemies exactly the same? There's like 3 different types, and then they just change colors and stuff for each world. Like,
that's what they do. Yeah, there's like 5 different types, and then they just have different skins, or maybe they have like damage, whatever, like extra to them. Yeah, so you got the regular enemies, which is just with the guns. You got the spring dudes that like kind of bounce all around. And then you got the big ones. So there's one with the boulder behind him, and then can just whack you when he gets close to you. Yeah. Then you got the buckler, which is like the shield dude with the gun. That was I did not like that one.
Yeah, because then you kind of have to get behind him, and it's very annoying sometimes.
Yes, when you see one of those, it's just like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be a bad time. But my absolute worst normal enemy is the support character, which can call in characters. They could heal them.
Yeah,
they were just rough. You had to get them out before anything else. So yeah, those were the normal enemies.
Yeah,
in that game.
So I don't really have a favorite normal enemy. But and you already kind of answered
them all.
Yeah, and you kind of actually answered the next question, which was, which normal enemy did you dread seeing on the battlefield? Like, definitely the support one. Like as much as annoying as the shield enemies were, the support enemies just kind of dragged the battles on, and that's what I don't like about them. Like that's kind of my pet peeve in some of these games, like having a support like an enemy that calls in other enemies over and over again until you kill them. Like I just don't like that in these types of games. So, because a lot of times that you're just so focused on the other enemies, it just makes it difficult to get to them, and then you just keeps making the battle go on and on and on. So,
yep, definitely.
All right. Last question from Blaze Knight before we get to our last question of the show. Did you like the alternate mechanics introduced for each boss fight? And I like the idea of them, and I like the fact that they how they varied up the gameplay with some of the ones you talked about, Garret. Like, I actually think like it felt the gameplay feel fresh, and that's why I actually liked the alternate mechanics there in each of the boss fights. I thought they were all well done.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I don't have much criticism behind the boss battles. I just I'm wondering what they're gonna do with Sparks of Hope. Like, what is something fresh other than more of the same?
Yeah.
What are the boss battles? Like, I'm very curious to know what they do this time with the new mechanics. So yeah, I don't have much criticism behind it other than, well, yeah, I agree with you. It kept the battle fresh.
Plus, like, none of them were like super difficult to figure out. Like, I like that, like how they were all like none of them felt obtuse or anything like that. Like that. If they felt like weird or like difficult to understand, like, even in something like Persona 5, Garret, where like you're fighting the boss of a palace, like sometimes you'll have this like alternate condition you have to fulfill, and sometimes it's not always like super obvious what that is or how you go about achieving that. Whereas a game like this, it just makes it very evident, like this is kind of what you're supposed to do. And I thought that the game was always very good at translating that information over. But last question of the week, Garret, has nothing to do with Mario plus Rabbids at all, and it actually has to do with, but it's still a Mario RPG-ish question. This comes to us from Skycatcher Gaming, who says, "What are your thoughts on the Paper Mario series? My family has only played 2 games in the series, Origami King and Super Paper Mario. Which game should we play next?" So, as far as Paper Mario is concerned, I'm kind of hit or miss with the Paper Mario series, because I like, the RPG Paper Mario games a lot, like the original one and then Thousand Year Door. I think those games are great. And then Super Paper Mario was pretty good too. But then the series kind of lost me when they did like Sticker Star and Color Splash, and like a lot of those games just kind of like the series kind of fell over with me. And I know like people like Origami King, but I just couldn't really get into that one either. Because I am, again, just looking for more of that like Mario RPG kind of experience. But I have to turn the tables over to you, Garret. What do you think about the Paper Mario series in general?
I'm not too experienced with the Paper Mario series. The only one I tried to get into was the recent one, Origami King. I rented it from the library, and I think I tried to play like 4 or 5 nights of it, and I think every night I fell asleep. Like I genuinely, I was tired too,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I just did not care.
Some of those battles will totally put you to sleep
about that game.
Oh man.
It was kind of rough for me with that game. But yeah, for the game you should play next, I think it's kind of obvious. I think Ryan mentioned it. Thousand Year Door is probably the most popular and most beloved.
Now, there's a caveat that
Mario
I'm
game.
going to throw out there.
There's a caveat. All right.
The caveat being Thousand Year Door is very expensive. You need a GameCube because it's not on any other platform. Now, in theory, this like Skycatcher Gaming, I know or I assume has a Wii because they played Super Paper Mario. So, and that in theory should play GameCube.
Isn't Super Paper Mario on Nintendo Switch Online? I thought it is.
No, I think just normal Paper Mario is, which is actually
which
actually was going to be my suggestion. Is actually Paper Mario on N64 Online is the one I think you should play next, Skycatcher Gaming, because especially if you like Super Paper Mario, which had some of the, that RPG flavor, but it was also trying to explore more of the platforming side of Mario. I think like it has a similar mix to just normal Paper Mario on N64 Online, which is actually the one I'd say to check out, because Thousand Year Door, absolutely to your point, Garret, is the best Paper Mario game by far, and it's the one that I wish everyone could play. But that game is like $150 on eBay. And then you got to buy a GameCube on top of that. So you're looking at like a $200 to $250 investment to play Thousand Year Door. So if
do you want to get a Super Paper Mario game for $77 on eBay?
I mean, that's also an expensive game, so I'm actually surprised Skycatcher has that. Unless, of course, they may have purchased it kind of when it was a brand new game at some point. But you're right, that's a game open price too. But
yeah,
because that was like the year after the Wii came out. So if you want a game more like Super Paper Mario, then I would say for sure try Paper Mario on Nintendo 64 Online. It actually really holds up pretty well. And I think the emulation's actually pretty good on it too. So I would say go with that one, give it a try. Otherwise, if you want something that's more like Origami King, you'd have to bust out something like the Wii U for Color Splash. I think might be your best bet. Don't play Sticker Star on 3DS. Don't play that game. That game sucks. But you can play Color Splash. It's not the best game in the world, but it is like definitely closer to something like Origami King if you want that style of game. So it kind of depends on what you're in the mood for. I think those are two good options, kind of regardless of which direction you want to go with. But again, similar problem to Thousand Year Door, playing Color Splash would mean you'd have to go buy a Wii U. And those are becoming expensive now. So yeah.
Man, I did not realize the Origami King, the developers Intelligent Systems. Are they the makers of the Paper Mario series in general?
They worked on some of the games, but they were. Okay. I don't think they were ever the lead developers on a lot of them.
Okay, well, they were the lead ones on the.
I know Origami King in particular. They were, but because they actually made that game before Three Houses.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, even though it came out like around the same time, I think the development, because they apparently worked on that like really far in advance. Because I think Origami King, if memory serves, I think that was supposed to be a Wii U game at one point. But then
oh my goodness.
Switch. But
yeah, a 2020 game.
But yeah, Paper Mario I think is a really good series, but it's just like they changed the way they developed those games after they introduced the Mario and Luigi series on 3DS. Or sorry, on DS or on DS specifically, like the RPGs. Like when Bowser Inside Story came out, like that's when they completely changed Paper Mario to not being an RPG anymore. So there you go. Well, anyways, Garrett, I think that's going to do it for this week's show. But before we go, Garrett plugs go.
You can follow me on Twitter at Blind Explosion. You can also find me on the Nintendo Shack, part of the Play Some Video Games Podcast Network. We're live each and every Friday nights over at twitch.tv/PSVG. It's around 10:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7:15 p.m. Pacific.
It's a good show.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I chat with Rebecca, all the Nintendo news, and yeah, we have a good time. That's pretty much it.
Nice. I also love the fact too that you didn't comment on the fact that when I was, throwing to you, Garrett, I did the arms thing again because I was doing this with my
eyes. You're making me resurface. Just like Sonic. It's just like it won't leave me. It won't.
Oh, you just wait, Garrett. I'm gonna be so insufferable when Sonic Frontiers comes out next month. Like, you better be ready because the Hedgehog, he's coming back. And as for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. Probably tweet about Sonic Frontiers or The Sims 4. And you can also find us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming. You can also find us on youtube.com/Carpool Gaming on podcast services around the globe. So, for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been level 68 or 67 of the RPG Cave. I'm not entirely sure. 67 of the RPG Cave. And we're out.
Bye-bye.